They called her toxic. They called her a feminist. But what if Eva was just the only one in the room brave enough to hold people accountable? Before we get into it, go ahead and hit that like button, especially if you've ever been labeled difficult just for keeping it real. Today, we're taking on Deliver Us from Eva, a sharp-tongued, grown folks rom-com that flipped the script on the angry black woman trope and gave us something deeper. We'll check in on the cast, revisit the drama, and ask the real question: was Eva the problem, or was she just the truth they couldn't handle? Let's get into it. First up is Eva, played by the one and only Gabrielle Union. Now let me be honest, Eva is one of those characters that gives people mixed feelings, me included. At first, she came across like a full-on feminist with a zero-tolerance policy for nonsense. But once you really dig into her story, you realize this woman had been through it. Eva was the eldest of the Dandridge sisters, and when their parents passed away, she was just 18. From that point on, she became the glue holding the family together. She sacrificed her own life, dreams, and freedom just to make sure her sisters were straight. So yeah, she's intense, but she's earned it. She holds people to a high standard because she holds herself to a high standard. Even at work as a health inspector, she didn't play. If you weren't up to code, she'd check you with the quickness. And when it came to love, same thing. She didn't have time for half-stepping. Gabrielle Union played Eva to perfection. She was 31 when she stepped into those heels, and let's be clear, she wasn't new to this. By then, Gabrielle had already made noise in films like She's All That, 10 Things I Hate About You, Love and Basketball, Two Can Play That Game, and of course, Bring It On. So when she took on Eva, she brought experience, charm, and that no-nonsense energy that made the character unforgettable. After Deliver Us from Eva, Gabrielle kept leveling up. She became one of the most recognizable and respected names in Hollywood. Now at 52, she's still glowing, still booked, and happily married to basketball legend Dwayne Wade. Basically living the life Eva would have dreamed of. For a lot of us, no matter how many roles she takes on, Gabrielle Union will always be Eva. Strong, smart, and unapologetically herself. Up next is Timothy, or let's just call him Tim, played by the almost forgotten man, Mel Jackson. Now, I don't know about you, but when a grown man named Tim walks in, soft-spoken and unsure, you already know there's either some childhood trauma or he just ain't built for confrontation. Tim had been married to Eva's sister for 3 years, but let's be real, he wasn't running anything. Their whole marriage was under Eva's watch. Now, is that his wife's fault? As a man, you're supposed to lead your household. But if your wife would rather listen to her big sister than her own husband, especially when it comes to something as personal as starting a family, then it says a lot about how much or how little she respected his leadership. But here's where it hits different. It's revealed that Tim had a strained relationship with his father, and all he really wanted was a chance to become a dad and do it better than the one he had. And honestly, that made me feel for him. He wasn't just some weak guy. He was a man craving purpose, trying to heal. Mel Jackson, the actor behind Tim, was 33 at the time. I already knew his face because I remembered him from the 1997 classic Soul Food, where he played Samuel. He had that smooth look, clean-cut style, seemed like the kind of guy Hollywood could run with. I honestly thought he'd end up a regular in Tyler Perry films or some solid black-led dramas. But looks can only take you so far in this game. Acting's demanding, and somewhere along the way, Mel Jackson lost that spark. After Deliver Us from Eva, he never really landed another major role. He's now 55 years old, and last I checked, he's been living a quieter life. Rumor has it, even working a regular job at McDonald's. Not everyone stays in the spotlight forever, but for those of us who remember him, Mel Jackson will always be Tim, the man who just wanted to be seen and heard. Moving on, we have Karina Dandridge, played by the ever-radiant Essence Atkins, who was 31 years old at the time. Before anything else, even before being Tim's wife, Karina was Eva's sister. That bond? Unshakable. So much so that if Eva said the sky was green, Karina would find a reason to believe it. And that loyalty ran deep. So deep, it even touched on something as personal as having children. Her husband, Tim, wanted a baby, and she let Eva's opinion override her own husband's voice. Now, in my opinion, that's not being a good wife. That's putting your sister's influence over your own marriage. And honestly, that's the real reason Tim and the other guys started scheming in the first place. They didn't just want Eva gone. They wanted their relationships back. But that's a testament to how well Essence Atkins played her role. Believable, grounded, and just real. She gave Karina heart, but also showed us how easily someone can lose balance when they don't set boundaries. By the time she landed this role, Essence wasn't new to the game. She had already been popping up in shows like The Cosby Show, Family Matters, and The Parenthood. But most of us really got to know her from the classic sitcoms Smart Guy and Half and Half, where she really made her mark. After Deliver Us from Eva, she didn't slow down. Essence Atkins kept thriving, landing roles in comedy films like Dance Flick and becoming a familiar face on hit shows like Tyler Perry's House of Pain, Are We There Yet?, Marlon, and most recently, Papa's House. She's now 53 years old and still doing her thing, gracefully aging, still acting, and still one of the most consistent talents in Black television. Essence has always been that girl, whether she's the voice of reason, the sweet sister, or the wife caught in the middle. One thing's for sure, she leaves an impression. Let's move on to a guy we're all familiar with, Dwayne Martin portraying Michael. Michael was one of the 3 guys dating Eva's sisters. His girl was Bethany. Now we'll get to Bethany later, but let's deal with Michael for a second. This man was living with Bethany, sharing a whole home, but still had to hear her say, "We shouldn't be shacking up, not until we're married, because Eva said so." Can you imagine? Michael was fed up. Every time he turned around, Eva's name was coming out of his woman's mouth. And that right there was enough to make any man want to change. Now here's the twist. Michael was a police officer. You'd think that comes with a badge full of confidence and control. But not Mike. For a guy with a gun and handcuffs, he sure didn't have a grip on his relationship. So what does he do? He becomes the mastermind behind a wild scheme to get Eva out of their lives by hiring a smooth-talking ladies' man named Raymond to sweep her off her feet. And yes, it was as crazy as it sounds. Dwayne Martin was 38 when he stepped into Michael's shoes, but by then he was already a familiar face. He had been holding it down in the 90s, with roles on sitcoms like Out All Night, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and Living Single. On the big screen, he had proven himself with films like White Men Can't Jump, The Inkwell, and Above the Rim. After Deliver Us from Eva, Dwayne kept it going, starring in the UPN sitcom All of Us, and later popping up on Real Husbands of Hollywood, where he played a funny version of himself. But in real life, let's just say things got messy. A lot of people started looking at him sideways after everything that went down with Tisha Campbell. That situation really changed how some fans viewed him. He's now 59 years old, still around, but his public image? Let's just say it's complicated. Still, when it comes to Deliver Us from Eva, Dwayne Martin gave us a character you love to be annoyed with. And you never forget the man who kicked off the whole plan to deliver them from Eva. Next up is Bethany Dandridge, portrayed by the talented Robin Lee. Bethany is Eva's sister and Michael's girlfriend. Now let me tell you, this isn't your typical girlfriend. Bethany works as a hairdresser, but she's got a vibe that goes beyond just her job. She's spiritual, the type of woman who takes her beliefs seriously, and she wasn't having it when Michael tried to get too comfortable. The whole cohabitation thing? Not in Bethany's world. She wasn't buying the idea that living together without marriage was a recipe for love, especially when Eva had told her that it was a surefire way to mess things up. In fact, Bethany listens to her sister so much that she even kicks Michael out of her house, telling him he can't live with her until he puts a ring on it. For Bethany, her sister's wisdom and guidance always held weight, and she believed Eva knew what she was talking about. Robin Lee was 29 at the time, and she brought something special to the role of Bethany. She wasn't new to the acting world. In fact, she'd made her film debut in 1999 with Have Plenty, and had been making her way through indie films before landing Deliver Us from Eva. That same year, she appeared in the action comedy National Security alongside Martin Lawrence, which gave her some more exposure. Her performance as Bethany left an impression, and after Eva, she kept going strong. She starred in films like 13 Going on 30, Hitch, and This Is Not a Test, showing that she could do comedy, drama, and everything in between. On the TV side, Robin had her last main role in 2017, where she starred in the mystery drama series Superstition. Today, Robin is 50 years old, and though she's not as prominent in the spotlight as she once was, I truly hope we get to see her bounce back on screen because she has that timeless charm that still has a place in Hollywood. Let's take a moment and remember this brother right here, Daryl, played by Dartian Edmonds. Daryl was the boyfriend to one of Eva's sisters, the youngest one to be exact. And man, this dude could not catch a break. Even when they were trying to have a little fun in the bedroom, Eva would randomly call her sister and kill the whole mood. Daryl would get mad every time, like, why is Eva always in our business? But let's be real. Daryl was a weak brother. He was terrified of Eva. There's this one scene that had me laughing. Eva made some beans during an afternoon hangout, and she didn't hold back on the spice. See, Eva had a way of testing men. Her theory was, real men could eat her spicy beans without sweating it out. Daryl? He tried, but he was sweating bullets, struggling to keep it together. That scene was just funny, man, a whole mess. Dartian Edmonds was 31 at the time, and by then, he had already been in a few solid films. A thin line between Love and Hate, Bulworth, and Trippin'. He was one of those guys with great comedic timing, and you could tell he had potential. But Deliver Us from Eva ended up being his last appearance on film. After that, it's like he got blackballed or blacklisted, whatever they call it, because I haven't seen or heard anything about him since. And honestly, something's not quite right about that. I wish I knew what happened to Dartian Edmonds because he had something. I'll keep looking though. As of now, he should be 53 years old, and I hope, wherever he is, he shows up one day. Moving on, we have Jackie, played by Meagan Good, the baby sister of the Dandridge crew. And you could tell Jackie was the youngest just by the way she clung to Eva. I mean, every time Eva spoke, Jackie nodded like she was in church. She followed her sister's words like gospel, and that really got under her boyfriend Daryl's skin. You can't blame him. Dude just wanted a grown relationship without Eva popping up like the third wheel. When Eva got that job offer in Chicago, it was Jackie who got all in her feelings. Out of all the sisters, Jackie struggled the most with the idea of Eva leaving. Eva had become their anchor, their go-to for advice, discipline, life decisions, basically their parent. And when that anchor started to drift, Jackie looked lost. Honestly, the dependency Jackie had on Eva was kind of cringy. But hey, I made it through, barely. To sum it all up, Jackie was a baby. A sweet one, but still a baby. Now, Meagan Good was just 22 years old at the time, still fresh-faced but already a seasoned talent. She made her film debut at just 14 in the cult classic Friday, and not long after, she lit up the screen in Eve's Bayou, a role that earned her award nominations and stamped her as a rising star. After Deliver Us from Eva, Meagan didn't slow down one bit. She gave us fan-favorite roles in Roll Bounce, Stomp the Yard, Think Like a Man, and most recently, she showed her depth in Divorce in the Black. On the small screen, she's been a powerhouse, with memorable roles in The Parenthood, Cousin Skeeter, All of Us, The Game, and plenty more. Today, Meagan Good is 43 years old and still shining, still doing her thing. From Jackie to Hollywood royalty, she's been growing up right before our eyes. Raymond, played by LL Cool J, was the definition of a smooth-talking hustler. Let's talk about this man for a minute. Ray was working as a meat delivery guy, and let's be real, the money wasn't exactly rolling in. His biggest dream? Owning a house. But with that paycheck? Yeah, not happening anytime soon. But where Ray lacked financially, he more than made up for it with charm. This brother could flirt like it was a professional sport, and he loved a challenge. He was Michael's boy, and when the guys were tired of Eva running their lives, Ray was their secret weapon. His job? Deliver them from Eva. His price? $5,000. Ray was a straight-up smooth operator, and if anyone could handle Eva's fire, it was him. But here's the twist. Even players fall in love, and that's exactly what happened. Ray, with his shiny bald head and cheeky grin, fell hard for Eva, the very woman he was supposed to run off. And LL Cool J? He killed it. Especially those scenes where he teased Eva, playful, confident, but still respectful. He knew how to push her buttons and pull her heartstrings at the same time. A masterclass. LL was 35 years old at the time, and he was already a household name. He'd made his film debut way back in 1985's Crush Groove, and had already made moves in films like In Too Deep, Charlie's Angels, and Kingdom Come. And let's not forget the sitcom In the House, where he showed he could bring the laughs too. Of course, LL Cool J is also known for his long run on NCIS Los Angeles, where he brought that same cool confidence to crime solving. A lot's already been said about him, so I won't bore you with the obvious. Just know that he's 57 now, still sharp, still stylish, and still shining, both on stage and on screen. LL Cool J wasn't just delivering meat, he delivered the heart of this movie. Every group of women in a salon always has that one desperate sister who will go out with any man, and in Deliver Us from Eva, that sister was Ormandy, played by the one and only Kim Whitley. Ormandy worked at the beauty parlor where the Dandridge sisters spent their time, and let me tell you, she was a whole vibe. Every time she popped up, the energy shifted. She brought the laughs, the real talk, and that unfiltered honesty every group needs. Now let's talk about her taste in men. Ormandy had her shot at love, and let's just say she preferred the broken ones. In her words, messed up men are the best. At one point, she even dated a 70-year-old man. That's Ormandy for you, bold, unpredictable, and always down for a wild story. But she was more than just comic relief. She was the glue of that salon. She kept the spirit of sisterhood alive. Without her, that place would have been dry and dull. When I saw Kim Whitley in this role, I knew the film was going to bring the heat and the humor. And sure enough, it delivered. Kim was 42 years old at the time and far from new to the scene. Before this, she'd been all over our screens in 90s sitcoms like Vinny and Bobby, The Parenthood, Martin, Sparks, The Parkers, and My Wife and Kids. Today, she's 62, still doing her thing, still active, and still as funny as ever. Oh, and here's a fun fact you probably didn't know. She's actually a cousin of actor and martial artist Michael Jai White. Small world, huh? Let's talk about Telly, played by Royale Watkins. Because every salon has that one brother who's blended in so much with the ladies, you forget he's a man until he starts talking about shoes and horoscopes with more passion than the women themselves. Telly was that guy. A brother who had absorbed the energy of the salon like a sponge. All the sass, all the tea, all the drama. At some point, his man energy was just gone, like it packed up and left the building. But I gotta admit, he brought the laughs. Whether he was roasting a customer or tossing shade like a pro, Telly had moments. He was clearly written as a gay character, and while there isn't a lot of depth to explore with him, he played his part in the vibe of the beauty shop setting. He was there, he was loud, and he was unforgettable. Royale Watkins was 34 years old when he stepped into Telly's shoes. Not much was known about him before Deliver Us from Eva, and honestly, I assumed he was just being himself. But plot twist, he's not gay in real life. In fact, he's married to a woman named April Watkins and living that quiet grown man life. Today, Royale is 55 years old, and while you won't see him in front of the camera much anymore, he's been working behind the scenes as a director and producer, making moves in the industry without all the noise. Telly might have been a lot, but Royale Watkins, he played the role like a pro. Ever had that one person who almost drove you to the edge of madness? Let's talk about Rashawn, played by Ruben Paul, the poor brother who tried to date Eva and ended up in a straight-up mental institution. Yo, this man was just looking for love, and instead he got a first-class ticket to Crazyville, all expenses paid by Miss Eva Dandridge herself. I mean, Eva didn't just reject him, she rearranged his whole psychological makeup. Rashawn went from being a brother in love to a brother in therapy, rocking back and forth, whispering her name like Beetlejuice. It was hilarious and tragic, but mostly hilarious. Eva had that type of energy, you know? The kind that challenged your ego, your self-worth, and your will to live, all in one conversation. In today's world, folks would call her a feminist with a capital F. But in the world of Deliver Us from Eva, she was that woman who made grown men break down in tears. Or in Rashawn's case, get institutionalized. You couldn't even blame him. He tried. He just wasn't built for Eva's smoke. Now, Ruben Paul, the man behind Rashawn, was doing stand-up in clubs long before this film. His age isn't exactly public, but he looked like he was in his early 30s when he played Rashawn. And now he's probably somewhere in his 50s, still doing stand-up, still connecting with every crowd, and still remembered as that brother who got driven crazy by Eva. Up next is Lucius Johnson, played by Dorian Gregory, the man who didn't just date Eva, he broke her heart and her virginity. Yup, Lucius was that guy, the first love, the one she thought she'd marry someday. They were high school sweethearts, wrapped up in young love and big plans. He even proposed. But Eva, in her usual laser-focused fashion, wasn't ready. All she wanted at the time was a career and to look after her sisters. Marriage? That could wait. Unfortunately, Lucius didn't want to wait. So what did he do? He dipped and married another fine woman, the one next to him in this picture. Smooth move, Lucius. Their reunion at a fancy dinner event later in the film was one of those classic, let me show you what you missed moments. And for a brief second, it looked like Eva might actually cave in. But nope. Ray swooped in just in time and shut that whole thing down. Lucius was left standing there looking like every man who thought the grass was greener, but deep down knew he was still peeking over the fence. Lucius Johnson wasn't just a character. He embodied lost love, missed chances, and regret. He was the living version of what could have been, something a lot of us can relate to. Now let's talk about Dorian Gregory. He was 32 years old when he played Lucius, already a familiar face on television. He started in the 90s doing roles in sitcoms and popping up in a few films here and there, but he's best known for his role as Detective Daryl Morris on the hit series Charmed. That's the role that really put him on the map. After Deliver Us from Eva, he didn't land anything major, but Dorian is one of those actors with a face you don't forget, especially if you were a fan of this film. He may not be everywhere these days, but fans still remember him for bringing Lucius to life. Today, he's 54 years old, and no matter what the future holds, we'll always remember him as the one who let Eva go. Renee Johnson, played by Kenya Moore, was the definition of a I won, now let me rub it in your face kind of woman. She was Lucius's wife, and together, the two showed up at that dinner like a couple straight out of a look what you missed out on playbook. Renee wasn't just there to smile and make small talk, she was flaunting their good life with every breath. She had the husband, the house, the kids, and she made sure Eva knew it. There's even a moment where she pulls out the family photos like she's flipping through a trophy case. The vibe? I married the man you turned down, and here's the proof we're thriving. And for a second, just a quick flicker, you could see something in Eva's eyes. Not quite regret, but a what if that sat quietly in the back of her mind. Renee and Lucius didn't just show up, they showed out, and they did it in a way that made Eva's accomplishments feel like they didn't matter. It was messy, passive-aggressive, and very real. Now let's give Kenya Moore her flowers, because even though it was a small role, she delivered. She played Renee with just the right amount of smug, classy shade. At the time, Kenya was 32 years old and already a name people knew, not just for her acting, but for winning Miss USA in 1993. That win made her the second Black woman to ever take the crown. Before Deliver Us from Eva, she'd already appeared in films like Waiting to Exhale and Senseless, and had made her rounds in some of the biggest Black sitcoms of the 90s, Martin, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, The Parenthood, and The Parkers. Since then, she's kept her name in the spotlight, mostly through reality TV, especially as a regular on The Real Housewives of Atlanta. Love her or hate her, Kenya knows how to stay in the mix. She's now 54 and still doing her thing, confident, unapologetic, and always camera ready. Reverend Washington, played by Aloma Wright, is one of those characters in Deliver Us from Eva who doesn't get much screen time, but makes it count. After church service, she finds herself in an unexpected showdown with none other than Eva. And let me tell you, Eva challenging a whole sermon had me like, is this really happening right now? The moment is intense, but also hilarious, because only Eva would try to fact-check the reverend in the church parking lot. It was one of those scenes that's brief but golden, and it reminded me why Eva was both brilliant and a bit much at the same time. At the time, Aloma Wright was 53 and already a seasoned pro. She'd made her mark in both film and television, showing up in movies like Trippin' and Kingdom Come, and blessing our screens on classic shows like The Steve Harvey Show, Malcolm in the Middle, and Girlfriends. She's that familiar face with a calming presence, whether she's playing a nurse, a mother, or in this case, a reverend who was not about to let Eva throw shade on the word. Today, Aloma Wright is 75 years old, still aging gracefully, and continuing to pop up on television here and there, reminding us why she's such a beloved and respected actress in the game. And then we have Thomas, played by Maine Rich Andrew, the brother who just came around to do some deliveries at the salon, but ended up catching more than just side eyes. This man had the audacity to say women are hard and mean right in the middle of the beauty parlor, and let's just say, Ormandy checked him real quick. That scene was short, but hilarious. A true wrong place, wrong time moment for poor Thomas. Maine Rich Andrew was just 23 years old at the time. He'd done a few lesser-known films before Deliver Us from Eva, but this quick moment was probably one of his most memorable. Afterward, he never really landed any major breakthrough roles, though he did pop up in a single episode of the detective series Cold Case and in Medal of Honor. Since then, he stepped away from the spotlight and is now living a more low-key life, doing a regular job out in Atlanta. He's 45 years old now, and while his time in Deliver Us from Eva was brief, it was definitely a funny and unforgettable little moment. Up next is Oscar, played by Matt Winston, a man who, at first glance, seemed like just another nervous restaurant owner trying to pass a health inspection. But things weren't what they seemed. Oscar worked for the health department and was undercover when Eva walked into that restaurant for one of her infamous routine checks. He posed as the owner, and from the moment she stepped in, it was game over. Eva didn't flinch. When she saw the place wasn't up to code, she gave it to him straight. This spot was getting shut down. No cutting corners on her watch. Later on, Eva finds out that Oscar wasn't who he claimed to be, and surprisingly, he and his team are actually impressed by her toughness. That scene reminded us just how seriously Eva took her job, and why people feared her clipboard more than a lawsuit. Matt Winston was 33 at the time he played this role. Before Deliver Us from Eva, he had already appeared in films like Fight Club and Totally Blonde. And here's a cool fact. He's the son of legendary special effects wizard Stan Winston. That's right. Without his father, we wouldn't have the groundbreaking effects in movies like Jurassic Park and Terminator. It's safe to say, movie magic runs in the family. Today, Matt Winston is 55 years old and remains one of those familiar faces that always brings something solid to the screen. And finally, we have the big bartender, played by none other than Terry Cruz. He worked at the bar where the boys usually met to plot their Eva escape plan. His appearance was brief, let's call it what it was, a cameo, but he made it count. Even in just a few seconds, Terry Cruz had presence. At the time, he was 35 years old and already a household name. He was starring in the classic sitcom Everybody Hates Chris, where most people came to love him as Julius, the penny-pinching yet lovable dad. But before all that, Terry was in the NFL. Yup, the man played pro football. It wasn't until retiring in 1997 that he jumped into acting, and from there, he put in the work. After Deliver Us from Eva, Terry kept climbing. He blew up with his iconic role in White Chicks and gave us more laughs in Friday After Next. He's also gone full action mode in the Expendables films. On TV, he's been crushing it on Brooklyn Nine-Nine as Terry Jeffords, showing that comedy, heart, and muscle can coexist. Now at 56 years old, Terry Crews is still shining, still entertaining, and still proving that there's no lane he can't own. And just like that, the plan to get rid of Eva turned into the love story nobody saw coming. Deliver Us from Eva wasn't just about controlling sisters or desperate boyfriends. It was about growth, letting go, and learning that love doesn't always come wrapped in comfort. Sometimes it challenges you, Sometimes it drives you crazy. But when it's real, it changes everything. Thanks for watching Movie Bites, where we honor the films that made us feel something. Until next time, keep the memories alive and the classics close.